Hey guys, Marissa at KitchenTableStamper.com. Today I want to run you through this fun little double gatefold greeting card. The Daisy bundle, the punch had been out of stock for a while, but it is back, and so it's time for me to run you through this great project. So I got this fun little double gatefold card, and it secures with the mini chevron ribbon here. When you open it up, you can see it opens in kind of almost in an accordion fashion, and then inside is this beautiful message, and the card stands to be displayed if you want to, and folds up completely flat for giving or for mailing. All right, let's walk through the supplies, the Stampin' Up! Supplies that I used to make this project. I have my Daisy Punch and my Daisy Delight stamp set. You can buy these as a bundle and save 10% from Stampin' Up's 2017-18 annual catalog. I am just loving this Daisy Punch and these beautiful three-dimensional flowers that you can make so easily when you combine the stamps and the punch. I've also used my Stitched Shapes Framelits dies. That's for the ovals that the daisy sits on. And then the layering ovals for the scalloped. You can see I've got some Daffodil Delight scallops around that little medallion. I used Everyday Jars framelits and cut myself 2 sets of leaves. It's like a little sprig from Old Olive cardstock. And then I also used my Seasonal Layers thinlits for this little flower here, just to bring a little more color to the front of the card. My Stampin' pads for this project are Night of Navy, Old Olive, and Daffodil Delight. And the consumable supplies for this project are this Daisy Delight Designer Series paper. This is 5.5 inches by 12 inches. And then you need quite a bit of Whisper White. You could probably just take a sheet of Whisper White for this project and you'll use quite a bit of it, but I did cut my pieces ahead of time, so let me show you what I've got here. This is the inside panel, and this one is 3.5 by 5. These are scraps for my daisies. You need about 3.25 by 2 3/4 for each daisy. Of course, if you had a bigger piece, that'd be fine. And then I already cut my oval with the stitched shapes. This oval would come out of 3.25 piece by a 2. And then I've got a piece of Daffodil Delight here. I cut this scalloped oval from it, and then I kept the scrap because we're going to use it for the center of the flower. Let's see, how big is this one? This one's 2 3/4 by 4 1/4. I've got the Old Olive sprigs that I told you about. I already die cut those. 2 1/4 square of Old Olive will give you those sprigs. And then I've got my little flower. This was Calypso Coral, and about 1 inch by 1.5 inch piece will give you this flower. I also have about 19 inches of this mini chevron ribbon. This is Crushed Curry mini chevron. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is build our card base. So we're gonna need our Simply Scored tool and our paper trimmer. I'm gonna get those and we'll get started. Okay. So I've got my Simply Scored in here, and we're gonna put the Designer Series paper in on the 12-inch side and score very simply at 2 inches, at 4 inches, at 8 inches, and at 10 inches. Then let me get my paper trimmer and a ruler. So I've got my Designer Series paper here, and I don't know if you realized, and I didn't say it, you definitely want to choose a Designer Series paper that has a front and a back that are both pleasing to your eye and that coordinate nicely, because both sides are going to show. All right, so we're gonna go on this daisy pattern side here. And what we're gonna do is from the bottom, we're gonna measure up here at 2 3/4. And then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. I am marking at 2 3/4 from the bottom. So 2 3/4, and I've made my mark. Now I'm going to get my paper trimmer, and I'm going to put this paper in the trimmer so that the mark is on the cutting track, and this second score line in is on the cutting track, making a diagonal cut that connects this second score line to the mark that we made on the paper. So we're going to need to really use the full length of this trimmer here. I've got my orange neon line on the cutting track, and I've got my score, and I'm just going to adjust until it's on the cutting track. I'm going to park my scoring blade, and with the cutting blade, I'm going to zip off that corner. Now, on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to put the paper in the trimmer so that the score line is on that cutting track. That's the second score line, not the 2-inch one, but the 4-inch one. And we're going to rotate until our pen mark is on the cutting track. We'll close up the trimmer and just double check our marks before we make our cut. Cut out that triangle. Now, hold on to these triangles, because these 2 triangles become this decorative piece on our finished card. See? And let's get started with our assembly. I have my bone folder here, and I'm going to work the little crease that's on this triangle so that our floral pattern is out. And then I want to work the creases of the card so that the denim looking, the Night of Navy pattern is in. So I'm going to fold in and then out, making sure to keep the card nice and square. And then same for this other side. We're going to find that score and fold in. And then we'll fold out. And there's our little double gatefold. Now, for these little pieces right here, I'm going to get some snail adhesive. And I'm going to put some snail adhesive just right here on this larger part that's kind of going to go to the inside of our card. Now, this one, if you look at our card, that one came from this corner. So it's going to flip and go to this side of the card. Did you see that? So here's where this came from. It's going to be positioned right in here. So what I'd like to do here is, keeping that fold intact, I want to go ahead and adhere just one side down first. Because this little piece right here won't go exactly into our inner score line. If it does, you'll find that this fold right here becomes too tight. So once you've got that adhered down, then you want to put your snail here on the outside of the card. Now we have a functioning fold here that doesn't buckle our card. Did you see that? I'll do it again for you. And I like snail because we've got just a little bit of wiggle room there to make sure that our folds are functioning and not too tight. All right, so this one is this corner. So it's going to flip, go down here. So we'll start with adhesive on this larger panel. And we'll tuck it in here so that it's not quite up against that inner fold. Do you see? There's just a little bit of room. Then we're going to make sure that our fold is functioning here. I've got a little bit of excess. All right, so then See how nicely that folds? We can go ahead and burnish down that inner piece and then add our snail adhesive to the outer piece, folds it around. And our card opens and closes, functions well. Okay, so we've got the mechanics here. This is the base of our card. Now we're going to decorate it up. Are you ready for that? Let's get some ink pads and Stampin' Pierce mat, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got 3 scraps of Whisper White, some Night of Navy ink, and my daisy stamp. We need 3 daisies in order to make this nice 3-dimensional flower. So we're going to stamp 1, and then another, and a 3rd one. Now, while our ink is still drying, I've got a aqua painter, and I'm going to use the aqua painter to pull some of that Night of Navy color onto these petals so they're not stark white. I like that little detail. Okay, so you can see the difference here, the 3 that I've drawn the ink and colored versus the ones that I have not drawn the ink out and colored. So I'll just do that really quickly to all these petals. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just trying to add a little bit of depth here. Okay, I'm back and I've drawn the ink from each of those petals from the center out, giving them some dimension, some shading, and punched 2 of the 3. I'm going to come back in here with my daisy punch and punch this last one. Now, the daisy punch doesn't love corners, so I'm going to go ahead and snip off the corner with my paper snips, and then I should be pretty easily able to just line up those petals. Did you see that? Once that corner's gone, it's much easier. When I've got the positioning that I like, then I move my hands so I don't pinch them and pop out that daisy. And there's all 3 layers. The next thing I want to do is bring in this 3.5 by 5 piece. And we're going to do our inside stamping here. So let's get our sample in here so you can see what I'm doing. And I've got my thank you greeting. It's a nice, large, bold greeting, a beautiful font. I'm just going to stamp that across the bottom. Oh, about a 1/2 inch from the bottom, 1/4 inch if you count the basement of the Y. Okay, then I've got this little daisy image from the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp one of those kind of low and off the edge of the panel. I'm going to stamp one kind of high, and then I'm going to stamp one alternating the direction, about there. So we've got our little cluster of 3 daisies, and then the stem image that also comes from the Daisy Delight stamp set. Ink that up with some Old Olive, and I'm going to add stems to each of these little daisies. And that's it. Inside of this card is beautiful. Look how fast that was. That'd make a pretty outside of a card, wouldn't it? Done. Let's get the scrap from cutting out our oval, scalloped oval, and I've got the daisy center, Daffodil Delight cardstock, daffodil ink, and there it is. I'm just going to fussy cut this little center right out. I'm not sure about a circle punch. There might be a circle punch that would punch that out, but it's kind of got an uneven edge, so I like that I can follow that uneven edge with the scissors, and it looks more natural. It doesn't take but a second to fussy cut. Okay, our stamping's done. I'm going to clear away the Stampin' Pierce mat and ink pads, and we'll assemble. Okay, I have my card base and the inside greeting panel and some snail adhesive. I'm going to add snail adhesive to to the back of the greeting panel, and we're gonna center it inside the card. Okay, inside's all done. Now let's assemble the flower. I've got a roll of mini glue dots here, and I'm just going to use the glue dots to add all of these little layers together to make this dimensional flower. So a glue dot on the center of each layer, and then we'll build one layer onto the next. So we got our center and our first daisy, and we're going to just slightly off center that one. We don't want to completely fill the gap. And then we'll take our layers, add another glue dot to the back. And then when we add that last layer, we'll fill the gap completely. So there's our little daisy embellishment. I've got my bone folder here, and we're going to very gently roll the top petals up. And then after we've rolled the top 2 layers of petals up, we'll roll the bottom layer of petals back. Okay, so we've got this beautiful 3-dimensional flower now, and I'm going to show you what I did, because nobody's perfect, right? I pulled too hard as I was shaping the petals and pulled one of the petals off of my flower. But because all of these gorgeous petals are covering each spot, we can actually just tuck that one right back in there, and we will have no problem. Nobody will know that there was ever a petal missing. So I've got my dimensional, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it so that it is over the area where I tore off the petal. I'm going to hold the petal in place, and then I'm just going to squeeze down. And now the dimensional is holding that petal, and you would never know that I lost the petal at all. Now I'm going to also, because my dimensional is off center holding that petal, I'm going to add a second dimensional. So alls we're out here is an extra dimensional. I might have only put one on the flower had I not pulled the petal off, but it's secure. Okay, now to our die cut pieces here. We're going to get some snail adhesive on the back of the stitched oval and layer it up on the scalloped oval. Then I've got an 1/8 inch hole punch, and we're going to carefully punch 2 holes here. And we're using the stitch pattern to make sure we get those in about the same place on each side. Just pay attention to which stitch you are punching next to, and you should get them pretty level across the front. Now, I've got a little multi-purpose liquid glue here. And I'm going to put some on the back of these leaves so that they're all ready to position. And then I'm going to remove the backing from our dimensionals here. Now, I want my leaves to go down from the center here so that they won't be in the way of the bow. And I want the other set of leaves to go up and diagonal so that they won't be on this in the way of the ribbon on this side. So we've kind of got everything dry fit here and the adhesive down, but what we're gonna do is just make sure we like where everything is before we go ahead and place the adhesive. I'm feeling pretty good about that placement, so we can just smush down, make contact there, and then on the back of the flower, we're going to put some multi-purpose adhesive, but only at the very bottom because it is going to flow off the edge of the oval a bit. I'm going to tuck that little guy right underneath and then fold it and give it a little bit of texture. All right, so there is our little daisy oval medallion. And I've got this nice 19-inch length of mini chevron ribbon. So I'm going to thread this ribbon front to back through this hole we punched on the left side of our daisy medallion. And then I'm gonna thread it from back to front through the opposite side. I want to make sure that the ribbon lays nice and flat through the medallion and that we've got enough ribbon on the right hand side here to complete our bow. Now the actual medallion itself is going to be adhered to just this panel right here of our gatefold card. So at this point we're going to get a nice strong adhesive. I like my fast fuse. You can use tear and tape for this application, but we want to just get enough fast fuse here on just the one side of our medallion that we can adhere it to the center, but it will only have adhesive on that left side. So I got it centered. I'm gonna lift, and then I'm gonna burnish, and then any adhesive that might have gone too far past our one panel there, we can just roll away. Now, there's our card. It's all assembled. It's ready for giving. Put our message inside, and then close, wrap, and tie. Let's make a pretty bow here. Now here we've got a pretty bow, and we're going to trim the edges just the tiniest bit. We're going to make a pretty little angle cut. We want to leave enough room for somebody to be able to open the card, but then close it back shut. More ribbon is better for that. And then on the edge of this mini chevron ribbon, because I have found that it is prone to fray, and if we're going to open and close this card repeatedly, we want to just grab a little bit of this fine tip glue pen, and we can run the tiniest little bead of glue right along the edge of this ribbon, and that'll work like a fray check, and it'll keep our ribbon from raveling when the card gets open and closed repeatedly. And you don't want to discolor the fabric, so just the littlest bit, and you work it into the weave of the ribbon, and it will not unravel when your recipient opens and closes the card. It ties that bow over and again. Okay, so here are our cards. If you've got any questions about Stampin' Up! Or about this project, you can email me, marissa@kitchentablestamper.com. If you're looking for a supply list and measurements, there's a printable project sheet on the blog. You can find a link directly below the video. If you've got any questions at all, please reach out and let me know how I can help you stay crafty. Thanks for watching.